Hey guys, welcome back to Donica and Shelby Read. I'm Donica and I'm Shelby. And in today's video, we are going to be talking about our April recent reads. As you can see, me and Shelby have really been going through things during the quarantine. So as you can tell, me and Shelby are not together, still social distancing. So while we are not together, we can do our reads for this month. So Shelby will hop on after me and let you know how she's doing, how much she has read this month. I know everyone's different. Some people are finding so much more time to read and are really embracing having to stay home. With me, I'm kind of like in the middle. Like nothing has changed. So a little fact, because I'm very vocal about how for about 4 years or so, I was in a major book slump. I was only reading a couple books a year. So I have read more books this year in the last 3 years combined, which is like crazy. I just was in that slump for so long and missing out on reading so many good books. It's mind-blowing. But this month I read 7 books, and my first book I read this month was by Gillian Flynn. I'm sorry if I say any of these authors' names wrong. Even if I do hear it's pronounced the right way, my brain immediately scrambles it up. But Gillian Flynn, she is an author that I will forever read anything by her. She could write anything, and I'm going to read it. So it's very weird that I had not read her short story, The Grownup. And I think it's because I would look at reviews and people were on the fence. Some really didn't like it all that much. So I was like, I just don't want to read it. But I've read everything else by her. She has some of the best twists that her books are amazing. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to read The Grownup by Gillian Flynn. It's only 64 pages. We never really find out the name of the main character in this book, but we do know that basically she's a hustler. She grew up with her mother. Her mother was a hustler. They would be out on the streets begging for money, but they knew how to basically play to their targets. They knew how to beg. So certain people need you to do certain things. So from a young age, she became very aware of what she needed to say or do to make money off of people. So when we're in this book, we find her, she's working in this fortune-telling establishment, and she's working in the back because it also is a secret sex brothel almost. So she's working in the back, kind of gets promoted. She gets to the front where they do psychic work there. She's not a psychic, but like I said, she's a very cunning, conniving person. She can read people and play to what they want to hear or what they need to hear. She meets this woman, and this woman comes to her and almost changes her and pulls at her heartstrings, because she's playing this woman, and this woman's coming to her saying, my house is haunted, I think something's wrong. She starts feeling for this woman and is like, oh, I'm not a psychic, but I kind of do want to go and see what's going on and try to help this woman, because her life is in shambles. What appears to be a haunting, what appears to be maybe a troubled stepson, and of course it's Gillian Flynn, and it turns into something more sinister, not as unpredictable as her other books. With her some of her work can be so it's not that it's not satisfying, but maybe you're not going to get the happy ending. So the ending is ambiguous. I feel like she left it up to the reader. So it was a good read. It was a quick read. I gave it 4 stars. I put because it's Gillian Flynn. I mean, immediate 4 stars. But wasn't the best thing I've read from her, but wasn't the worst thing I've read, this year. So 4 stars. So the next book I read was from our OwlCrate unboxing, and this was one of the books that we got in the box, and this is called The Yeti Files, Attack of the Kraken by Kevin Sherry. This is actually the 3rd book in the series, and what's kind of weird about this is this book came out a couple of years ago, and nothing has come out since. So I don't know what's going on with that. I hope more come out because I really liked it. I'm not sure. It doesn't say who it's illustrated by, so I'm assuming it's also illustrated by Kevin Sherry, and the art is just so cute. Basically, you are following 3 friends, and it is a Yeti, a little goblin, and a little elf, maybe. I'm not exactly remembering. Mythical creatures calling them for help. So in this one, you have some mer people who are calling them because they're in trouble. A Kraken is destroying all these buildings and things around them, and they're like, come on down, help us figure out how to get rid of this Kraken. It was such a quick, fun read. I ended up giving this 4 stars. My daughter, who is 5 years old and has the attention span of a goldfish. I mean, it's hard to keep a 5-year-old sitting and reading a book for more than 30 minutes, but she actually sat and we read this whole thing, and it took about 30 minutes to read out loud to her, but she really enjoyed it. I would like to pick up the rest. I liked it. So the next book I read this month was our book talk. It was The Woman in the Window by AJ Finn. This was our book pick of the month. We were going to power through April. We had planned all these big plans. We were going to try to do like 4 book talks this month. We love doing book talks. And that's basically me and Shelby pick a book. We read it. We don't talk about it. We don't text about it until we get to sometimes a car, sometimes her house, and we talk about the book. This is the one we picked for April. Obviously, everything hit the fan and we couldn't do our book talks like we wanted, so this was the only one we did for April. And I will post the link down below of our book talk if you really want to know exactly what my thoughts were. Basically, in this book, we're following Anna Fox. A tragic event in her life caused her to have severe agoraphobia. So we're following her as she is trapped in her house and witnesses what she believes is a murder, but can't leave her house. No one believes her. And the reason that I wanted to read this is because my queen, one of my favorite actresses, Amy Adams, is actually playing her in a soon-to-be major motion picture. It was supposed to come out in May. I'm not sure if it will anymore. It might get pushed back. I actually think a lot of movies are getting pushed back months. I gave this book 2 stars. Go ahead and look at our book talk for more info on that. It was just really boring to me. Because of this book, I have now set a basically standard for myself when I read thrillers or whodunit mysteries, that if I can figure out who did it or what's going on, will I still like the book? Because I figured out what was going on. I think page 34 in this book, I figured out what was going on. Not the whole concept, but the big twist, I believe what was supposed to be the big twist. And I was just bored because she's an agoraphobic. Most of this takes place in her house and she's not very interesting. Go ahead and check out the book talk for more info on that. They are spoiler book talks. Whenever I read a book that I just find myself wondering why I picked it up, I do go to usually middle grade. When I'm in a slump or when I read something I do not like, I gravitate to middle grade. This was called The Midnight Hour by Benjamin Reid and Laura Trinder. We got this in another OwlCrate unboxing. We unboxed, me and Shelby, on this channel, so I will link that video down below if you're curious. But we got this in one of the boxes. Holy cow. This book was so good. I gave it 5 stars. I think this is when's the last middle grade I gave 5 stars? I'm not sure. So we're following our main character, Emily. Basically, both of her parents vanish and she realizes that there's this whole past to her mom and dad that she does not know about, or this whole part of their lives that she does not know about. And it exists within the midnight hour, which is basically a different realm you can get to through these certain doors. It's where like all the magical creatures exist and live. She's looking for her parents and she's trying to figure out, what are my parents? Like, who really are my parents and what does that make me? I laughed out loud with this book many times. Emily is hilarious. She is so sassy. She reminds me of my daughter so much. And she'll always say, she calls her mouth like her gob. Like if she's acting up, she's like, oh, there's my gob again. I think that's what she calls it. Like, my gob is acting up. It's gonna get me into trouble. There is this one vampire in this book. He is a bad guy. And he, from the start of the book to the finish, is just getting the living crap kicked out of him in all different ways. The scenes with this vampire like had me rolling, which is so funny and random. It's just such a good book. The second book comes out very soon. I'm going to pick it up. Love it. And also with the OwlCrate, you get like certain little things, special things with the OwlCrate. And this one is signed. So how cool is that? It's signed by both authors. My son, who I'll always reference, my oldest, who's 10, I always talk about how he usually reads books before me, but this one I read before him because he reads so fast. And I was like, you are going to love it. And he did. I think He read it multiple times and he was cracking up. He would come up to me and be like, this part was so funny when she does this. So after that book, I read The Luminous Dead, and this wasn't on like a TBR. I just randomly saw this on Amazon. This is by Caitlin Starling. I believe it's her debut novel. And I just randomly saw it. Now, one thing you know about me, it's my favorite movie. Like movies, I can watch forever. Much like with my books, my movies are the same. I watch them for enjoyment. If they're Oscar nominated, this is probably gonna pass on it. Top movie of all time, call me basic, but The Notebook. The Notebook I can watch. And I'm not into those type of movies, but for some reason, The Notebook makes me so nostalgic. I will, if you're a bird, I'm a bird. John Q. I don't even know how that became in my possession when I was like a teenager, John Q. And another top 5 that if it was on, I'd watch it. Usually it would come on, I think, TNT a lot, and it was The Descent. So The Descent 1 and The Descent 2, I think, are why I love cave stories so much, because I just love those 2 movies. After reading this book, I went immediately to, I think they're all on Amazon Prime. I went immediately to Amazon Prime and watched The Descent 1 and 2 because I couldn't pass it up. And looking back on those movies, they're from like 2005. The quality of the movie is not, it's still pretty good, but it was hilarious. Like thinking in 2005 when I was watching it, I'd be like, like the little creatures were so scary. The Luminous Dead, the entire book is set in the cave, and it's on another planet. So this is set in the future. There are people that go spelunking basically into these caves to find minerals and, you know, very dangerous situations, especially on certain planets. Like our main character is on a planet where it's a very poor planet. So these caves are, you know, a lot of money can be made in going, investigating and exploring these caves for big companies. I ended up giving this book 3 stars. It was a little slow at times. Told you I love a good cave story, but when I'm reading 100, 200, 300, 400 pages of her doing the same thing, which I guess I should kind of explain what she's doing. We are following our main character. Now I'm going to put right here what her name is, how it's spelled. Now I was calling her Gear this whole book. I was calling our main character Gear, and honestly I loved it. I was like, this is amazing. I love that name. I only found out after I read the book, because after I read the book, I go onto like Goodreads and look at the reviews, and I saw that the author commented that it's actually gyre, like gyrate, so gyre. So our main character, Gyre, is hired, and you jump in from page 1. You jump in, you're on this mission with her. So we're basically just following Gyre through this cave system, and I'm telling you, y'all, it is a little creepy, like I will say. So the creepy factor of this book is there's also kind of like the movie Tremor. They're called tunnelers, and they do remind me of the creatures from the movie Tremor. That are also another aspect of danger in this book. The 2 main characters are gay. You find out, that's not really a spoiler, but I really don't read a lot of books where the main characters are gay or you have that representation. So, I mean, I loved it. I loved it. Okay, I ship them. Like I said, if it had been cut down by like 100 to 150 pages, I think I would probably give this like 5 stars, but you have to know what you're getting into. You know, it's not high action. It's really just like monotonous cave. But like I said, 3 stars. Anyway, I hope I explained that good. Okay, let's move on. I really took like a 180. Like I said, I really don't even know how I find books sometimes. Oh, you know what? I do know. It was on Facebook. There was a group, little offshoot group from My Favorite Murder, the podcast. It's like an offshoot book group. I think it's called Darkest Hollows. Someone had put, what's the most twisty book you've ever read, or what's a book that just threw you, like you completely had no idea what was going on. So I actually added a couple of books to my TBR from that list, and I picked this one up because it was only 242 pages, and it's called I'm Thinking of Ending Things by Reid. I gave this book 5 stars, first of all. Now, this book is so hard to describe, and I really think you should go into it just completely blind. I understand why some people hate this book, and I understand, I mean, I obviously understand why I love this book, but if you read this off of my recommendation, you're like, why? It's actually becoming a Netflix movie, a Netflix original movie starring, I can't remember. I think reading this and in conjunction with the movie, am just gonna be, I will read this book again. And let me tell you, this is a book that I think you will benefit reading it and then reading it again. So we're following our main character, and she is headed to her boyfriend Jake's parents' house out in the country. And they haven't been together too long, but long enough that he wants to introduce her, obviously. And little does Jake know, the girlfriend is having second thoughts about the relationship, about him. There's about 30 to 40 pages of this book that they're in a car and they're just discussing things. Jake's very intelligent. When you're reading it, you're just like so enthralled with what they're saying, and it's such deep conversation. There are also very creepy aspects to this book, once again, and very unsettling. I think there was a blurb for this book. It said, you will be so completely creeped out and unsettled and you won't understand why, or you won't be able to say why. I 100% agree with that. But my husband came into the room at one point when I was reading, and I was like, can you not leave? Because I'm so scared right now. He's like, are you okay? At page 90, I attempted to solve what was going on, and I failed. Now, I will say, even after reading it, not only did I not solve it, even after reading it, I had like a Shelby moment where I was like, what? Like, I still couldn't solve it after finishing it. Like, what's going on? If you like your endings wrapped up in a bow, just like with the Grownup by Gillian Flynn that I mentioned, this book will also be not your cup of tea. It is ended well, but maybe not for your taste. If you need it to, all your I's to be dotted, all your T's to be crossed, it's not that type of book. I highly suggest when you read this, after it, before you make any, before you just start ranting and raving and hating it, I will link some discussion sites that I went to down below. Really one in particular, but there was a Reddit one too that I went to. I highly recommend you go to those sites and look at the discussion, because so much good info was dumped on there, like people's ideas, and it really just, this book is just so many things going on with it, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it. So I put, after my existential crisis, after I read that and had my little crisis, I actually picked up Pan's Labyrinth, the book I picked up. It's been on my TBR for many months. I picked it up at I bought it on Amazon. Another top 5 movie. I can always watch it. I absolutely love this. Guillermo del Toro. I cannot say the name. Guillermo del Toro. Guillermo del Toro, right? Is it Guillermo del Toro? Whatever. So I tried to read Pan's Labyrinth, couldn't really get into it, wasn't in the mood for that. I was just like, what's my TBR that I would like to finish out April with? Little Secrets by Jennifer Hillier came out. This was on my anticipated reads for 2020. It's been out for not very long. It came out in April, but the reviews have all been kind of across the board pretty good. I gave it 5 stars, and like I said before, my criteria now for thrillers, if I figure out what's going on, will I still be interested? So with this, I'm like, yes, this book is following our main character, Marin. Her and her husband, Derek, are in their mid-40s. They're very well off, kind of like have it all. If you look at somebody, they have the perfect house, the perfect cars. They're both extremely attractive. They're living this dream life. All of a sudden, one day, Marin's at a market. This takes place in Seattle. So she's at a market in Seattle, and her son is abducted, almost in plain sight, daylight, just abducted. And we flash forward a year later, and her son Sebastian has still not been found. The leads have dried up. Marin hires a private investigator, and she finds out her husband Derek is cheating. So this perfect family, they have it all, and she realizes her husband is cheating on her with someone half of her age. So I will say a lot of this book is less about, and it all ties together, good, but it's less about the abduction and the finding of a son and more on an affair of a husband and wife, and the grief that the wife is going through over the loss of her son, or this limbo she's in because she doesn't know, is my son alive? Is he dead? I loved how small little plot points were dropped in throughout the way, and they were actually big things, that involved the main characters, but they were just kind of dropped in. You're like, what the heck? It was almost 400 pages, and I read this in a day, about a day, a little over a day. I had finished it because I was just like, I could not put it down. It was so good. So I will say this is more about an affair. And I will say I did figure out who, what, why. I literally figured out everything except I think a little part of the why, which I think that's up to the author's interpretation. You know, I can't really figure that out. I have to have that given to me at least, but I was still super interested, and there was still a little bit of mystery of certain points I had to wait to get to the end to see. We haven't been able to make a video in a while, so I definitely miss this. I miss Shelby being here. This does not count, but for now, this is all I get. This is the only Shelby I get. So what do y'all think, y'all? Should I replace Shelby with this little guy? All of my links to my books will be down below. If you've read any of these books, please discuss your feelings, your thoughts. Now it's Shelby's turn, y'all. So, see you in the next video. Bye! Oh!
Hello, everybody. It is sad doing this without Donica here because usually she's kind of off to the side listening, making her little comments, and it's like, you know, there's someone in the room with me. It's also kind of strange because I haven't filmed in so long. Well, so we filmed, posted, I think we skipped a week, and then we posted a pre-filmed video that we filmed a long time ago. It's just so nice to be able to sit down and talk with y'all. I want to tell y'all a little bit about what I've been reading this month. There has been a definite reason that I did not read as much this month. I'll talk about it at the end of this video, and then any of y'all who have been going through the same things, I'd love to hear from y'all as well. But before that, I'll just get straight into the books for those of you who are just curious about the books that I was reading this month. So I'll get started. The first book that I read this month was The Woman in the Window, our Booktalk book. And me and Donica had very different opinions on this book. I believe I gave this book a 4.5. I really loved it. The aspect of it that I was more drawn to, rather than like the whodunit, the thrilling aspect of it. I'm kind of a reserved person, so my internal world is very chaotic and it's very reserved and I keep a lot within me. So when I get to read a book about someone with a very chaotic internal world, it's like I have someone to work through these emotions with. And I couldn't articulate that when we did the book talk, but now I think I can kind of articulate, okay, I think I love the psychological aspect of this because I love hearing people's inner thoughts. I love knowing what's going on in their brain and how they're dealing with certain things. So that's what I loved about The Woman in the Window. I think Donica already probably touched on the summary of this book, so I won't get too into it. But yes, there is a whodunit. The agoraphobic main character is mixing pills and alcohol, so it's not that she can't trust her own eyewitness, it's that no one around her can trust her eyewitness, that while she was potentially hallucinating, she saw a potential murder. It's very interesting, and I really loved it, but Donica was very disappointed by it. So we have a whole book talk on it, and you can see where we kind of go more into detail about what we thought about it. At the point in the month where I decided to read my next book, I was already feeling a little bit, which I'll get into later in my section. I was feeling very unmotivated. I knew I wanted something that would be very easy to read. So luckily I remembered I had this YA, Looking for Alaska by John Green, and I was like, you know what, let's go ahead and read that. I remember these being very easy, John Green books being very easy to read when I was in, I think that was when I was in 8th grade that I read Paper Towns, Fault in Our Stars. I read those books around 8th grade to my freshman year in high school. It is set in a boarding school, and we're following a main character who the whole time goes by Pudge. I believe he's called Pudge because he's very skinny and very tall, so it's very ironic that he's called Pudge. He didn't have a lot of excitement in his life, and he was just really craving something. He wanted to take that big jump. He wanted to go into what he called the Great Perhaps or something. He was very into famous last words of writers and historical people. And someone's famous last words were that they were going to seek out the Great Perhaps. So Pudge gets sent to boarding school. He is roomed with a general who is just this rambunctious little guy, and he is just super cool. He's going to show Pudge the ropes, you know, of the boarding school. And then he's just down the hall from beautiful Alaska Young, who he immediately fixates on, and he's absolutely head over heels in love with her. But Alaska's acting strange, and she has a secret, and no one understands Alaska. And everyone at this boarding school is just kooky pranksters, and they're putting together all these pranks, and they want to get in trouble and they want to have fun, but they also want to study because they're studious. And good job, John Green, for promoting studying in your books. Alaska starts getting more and more removed. She starts drinking more. She's having issues, and a tragedy happens, and the team has to go through the rest of the book trying to put together what led to the tragedy, how are they at fault in this tragedy, and how do they move on. It's been like 10 years since I read Paper Towns. It's probably about 10 or almost 10 years. I have a very bad memory, but what I remember about Paper Towns was some boy who just was so fascinated by some girl, and the girl is always like perfect in their eyes, very interesting and super just a mystery. They're an enigma. And as soon as Alaska was described, I don't know. I was not impressed. I think, when I would have just been really blown away by this, I think this would have really resonated with 8th grade me, because it does talk about mortality and the meaning of life, but I guess reading it as an adult, every few pages I was like, Shelby, read it for what it is. 10 pages later, Shelby, just read it for what it is. And I cringed a lot reading this, and I just had to keep reminding myself, I don't want to sound like I think I'm too good for reading a John Green book, because I really enjoyed it, and I think that I would have really enjoyed it in about 8th grade. I think it would have really hit me. I empathize with Alaska, but I don't care enough about Alaska to care really about her or the way that she could potentially be hurting the other people in her life. I just don't care. The book doesn't make me care about her enough, and the book doesn't make me care about Pudge enough. He is so fixated on Alaska, which I understand is the point of it. Just because there's like this perfect woman for a man, it doesn't mean that she has any responsibility to save him or help him or be with him or love him. But still, I didn't care enough about Pudge and his fixation on Alaska and his fixation on wanting to, like, one of the discussion questions at the back of this book is, did you like Alaska? Is it important for readers to like the characters in books? It's like, oh, did I like Alaska? Did I like Pudge? Did I like anybody in this book enough to care about them? I give Looking for Alaska 2 stars. I don't give it 1 because it's not one of the worst books I've ever read. I'm not going to give it 3 because I wouldn't recommend it to anybody. But I give it a 2 because I'm not regretful that I read it. I didn't particularly enjoy it. Whatever my book taste is, this didn't strike a chord with it. So that's that. Hilariously enough, the next book that I read, I had no clue how many parallels it would have to Looking for Alaska, which is a separate piece by John Knowles. Straight off the bat, I'm going to tell you this is a 5-star novel for me. I absolutely loved this book. I loved everything about it. I was just talking about rich inner monologues. Man, Jean's inner world is, I want to be friends with Jean. He might throw. We're following essentially 2 boys in a boarding school, which, wowie, boarding school books. So we're following 2 boys in a boarding school. Jean and Phineas are the 2 boys. They have a very unique friendship because they are best friends. They are very loyal to each other. But Jean has this like jealousy. I'd say it's like, I guess, more resentment than jealousy festering in his heart over Phineas, because Phineas is just this charismatic, pure, athletic. Also, judging by Jean's descriptions, he's very handsome as well. Jean sees Phineas and he is just so stricken by his perfection to Jean. Phineas has just this huge air of perfection to Jean, and I think Jean is just so struck by that it hurts him, and he just can't take it, and I don't think he understands it. And so essentially Jean and Phineas are always running around this boarding school having the time of their lives, led by Phineas, because Phineas is very rambunctious and he's very much the kind of kid who's like, he's on the good side of all the teachers at the school. And so there's also this air of the war like ever encroaching on them, because as they're getting older and older, they're going to, sign up for what they're going to do in the war. They're going to get drafted. So there's always this like, war is always like encroaching. Is encroaching the right word? War is approaching and encroaching. There's an accident that changes Phineas and his future forever, and Jean might have something to do with it, which is something that he's going to wrestle with throughout the entire rest of the book. And the book is just, there is like hard hitter after hard hitter after hard hitting line in this book. It is like, every sentence, I'm for sure rereading this. I'm going to reread this because I wanted to highlight everything. Gene is just so introspective and he's so observant. I mean, not introspective enough to, you know, there's sometimes, if you ever read, he's not introspective enough in some ways, but just his observations, and it is just a very amazing book. If you're interested in wartime novels, or if you don't shy away from books that are very, I guess, descriptive of just everyday life, then I would really suggest this book. It is absolutely excellent. I loved that I could chew on so many things. There were so many questions that this book asked, and I love that I can chew on them forever. So really quickly, I just kind of want to touch on the similarities that I saw between these two books and why this book satisfied me so much more than this. First, I'd like to say, if I read this in high school, I'm going to be honest, teenage Shelby didn't deserve this book. I would not have been able to comprehend, I would not have been able to, I didn't have the attention span to read something like this, if I'm being honest, and it's really not a difficult read, but I still would not have had the attention span. I know that I would have read this, I would have gotten bored, I wouldn't have understood it, I would have skimmed it, and it would not have resonated with me. If Shelby in high school read this, she would have really got a lot out of it. And it's not that I didn't get anything out of it, it's just that I guess what I'm looking for in a book is just so different now. So let's see. They're both set at a boarding school. There is one friend transfixed with the other's perfection. Kind of starts resenting them. Ends up accidentally hurting them in a way that they weren't expecting, and then they have to deal with the guilt for the rest of the book. Probably the rest of their life. Get into pranks throughout the book. So many parallels, and I think this one just was really rich because it had that backdrop of war to it that just, you know, war is, humans could talk about war forever and the implications and why humans get into war. So I think this just has a little bit more richness to it for me. This was a nice easy little read. Okay, so that is all the books that I read this month. Really quickly, I just want to touch on why I haven't really been reading this month, and I just want to open up because during this time of like mandatory isolation, or if it's isolation is encouraged wherever you are, I guess the hardest thing for me has been putting structure in my day. I don't know why or how, but it was like all of the tasks that I had to get done in a day, instead of being, even if they were very like fun things or enjoyable things, it just became almost overwhelming for me. Like, let's say one of the things I wanted to do during the day is paint my nails. The thought of putting that into my day and structuring my day was so overwhelming for some reason, and I don't know why. I know a lot of us are feeling strange and new feelings right now during this time. I had to get like a certain burst of energy or a certain burst of like joy or happiness to want to do anything. So even though reading is so enjoyable for me and it takes me out of my world and it helps me, I've talked about it quite a bit on this channel why I love reading so much. The thought of picking up a book was overwhelming, and I know that sounds strange, and there's a lot about this time in the world that is overwhelming right now. And picking up a book shouldn't be one of them, but that's just how my experience has been right now. Reading for me has been something I really want to do, but for some reason has been so difficult to just do it. So next month, I'm really hoping to start bullet journaling or journaling in general. I'm hoping that y'all will look forward to even more books from our channel, and the book talks really help as well. And so I just kind of wanted to talk about that a little bit. I like reading. It's not that I feel bad about reading through books. I have a want to read more. I want to read more. Yeah. I want to make it a bigger priority, and especially because we have this channel, I want to make it a bigger priority so that I can just share more with y'all. So I just wanted to talk about that. See if anybody else out there is maybe feeling the same way. Thank you so much for anybody who watches our videos. If you know a bookworm in your life, go ahead and tell them about our channel if you think that they'd enjoy it. Everybody, I hope you have a great day. Usually Donica's right here and we wave together, but it's just gonna be me today. I don't know how our content is going to look in the next few weeks. I hope that y'all will be patient and support us in the things that we put out. Keep reading. I will be. Donica will be too. And I will see y'all the next time that we film, the next time that we post. I hope until then that y'all stay healthy and safe, and we'll see you next time on our channel. Bye!